I'm going to tell you why it's going to flow. And then bring my little talk to a close. In 1964, 97% of the black American voters supported Lyndon B. Johnson, Hubert Humphrey, and the Democratic Party. 97%. No one minority group in the history of the world has ever given so much of its uncompromising support to one candidate and one party in the history of the world. No one people, no one group has ever gone all the way to support a party and its candidate as did the people, the black people in America in 1964. Look how many people voted for Goldwater. Over 26 million. Why, when you deduct the non-white people from the total white population, you'll find out that white people were almost evenly divided between Goldwater and Johnson. Yes. Go get the total number of voters in this country and find out how many of them are white. Deduct the non-whites, the Puerto Ricans, and the Negroes and the others, and you'll find out that white people didn't support Johnson like they want to brag that they did. The non-whites went for him 97%. And the first act of the Democratic Party, Lyndon B. included, in 1965, when the representatives from the state of Mississippi, who refused to support Johnson, came to Washington, D.C., and the black people of Mississippi sent representatives there to challenge the legality of these people being seated. What did Johnson say? Nothing. What did Humphrey say? Nothing. What did Robert Pretty Boy Kennedy say? Nothing. Nothing. Not one thing. These are the people that black people have supported. This is the party that they have supported. Where were they when the black man needed them last couple of days ago in Washington, D.C.? They were where they always are, twiddling their thumbs someplace in the pool room or in the gallery. So black people in 1964 will not be controlled by these Uncle Tom leaders. You believe it? They won't be held in check. They won't be held on the plantation by these overseers. They won't be held in the corral. They won't be held back at all. The frustration of these black representatives from Mississippi when they arrived in Washington, D.C. the other day, thinking, that the great society was going to include them, only to see the door closed in their face like that. That's what makes them think. That's what makes them realize what they're up against. It is this type of frustration that produced the Mau Mau. They reached a point where they saw it takes power to talk to power. It takes power to make power respected. It takes madness almost to deal with a power structure that's so corrupt. So corrupt. So in 1965, we should see a lot of action. Since the old methods haven't worked, they'll be forced to try new methods. If you read the article in this week's U.S. News and World Report, which is not the best magazine in the world, where it does tell, though, that the Big Six, they call themselves the Big Six, the leaders of the black community who have been endorsed by the white community, the Big Six, they themselves are turning to Africa. Dr. King, Farmer, all of them are admitting that the problem of the black man in America is inseparable from the problem of the African. Dr. King and Mr. Palmer and the others, Roy included, Uncle Roy, are admitting that the problem of that the black man cannot get dignity in America until the black man has dignity on the mother continent. They're admitting this. They're admitting that the roots of the black man in America are still in Africa. They're admitting this. I was shocked to see them admit so much, so soon, so publicly. I was shocked to see that they will say in public what they've always agreed to in private. I was shocked. But it shows that they themselves are undertaking a revolutionary approach to the problem. They're beginning to see that the problem of the black man in America no longer is a Negro problem or an American problem. It's a world problem. When they begin to identify our struggle with the struggle of the brothers on the mother continent, then these big six, Uncle Roy, are seeing the necessity of internationalizing the problem. Now, either they have to deny it or confirm it. But I don't think this magazine would say all what it has said and quote them too. Here it has Dr. King saying, there is a growing willingness among U.S. Negroes to identify with the Africans. There is a sense of pride as American Negroes see black men in positions of importance in the United Nations, accorded courtesies which American Negroes are not accustomed to receiving in their own country. This is Dr. King talking. He was up on the mountain. And they're beginning to see that the only way the black man in this country will ever get any solution to his problem, it will have to be a solution which the government in Washington has no hand in. Because the government can't solve the problem. The government consists of crackers from Mississippi and Georgia and Alabama and Arkansas and Texas. So they are beginning to see that it is not we who should be taking our problem to Washington, but it is we who should be taking Washington to the United Nations. It is not we who have committed the crime. It is not we who have committed the crime. It is our government that has committed the crime. Our government has failed to protect our lives, to protect our property, to give us proper education. It has failed to even give us the proper facilities for education. It has failed to house us. It has failed, as the men there in the book up in Boston, when they dumped all the tea in the sea, taxation without representation has got to go. So I say in my conclusion, to read from another newspaper, many of you say, well, would we have the right to take the problem of the black man in this country before the UN? I say yes, because here it says, this was in the Post a couple of days ago. The Post is a New York paper, represents itself as liberal, which is a misrepresentation. It says, House asked to condemn Soviet treatment of Jews. Representative Halpern of Queens urged the House today to condemn what he termed the odious and discriminatory treatment of the Jewish community in the Soviet Union. He drafted resolutions for introduction that would condemn Russia for the persecution of Jews and placed the House on record as favoring continued American efforts to obtain through the UN world condemnation and prohibition of anti-Semitism in treaty form. Soviet policy, Halpern said in a prepared speech, involves a premeditated effort to stamp out Jewish culture and religion. It is a deliberate policy, but also a secretive one. If this representative voted into office, probably by many people sitting right here, can go to Washington, D.C., and get that house, that governmental body, to stick its nose in what's happening to 3 million people all the way on the other side of the world, and have that government brought into the United Nations and condemned for its abuse of the rights of those 3 million people, I say that the 22 million black people in this country are justified and within our rights to ask our brothers on the African continent to take this government into the United Nations and protect us. The remark that I made, the lady said that she enjoyed herself, but she ceased to feel joyful. I'm paraphrasing the question. When I mentioned that the landlords living up on the Grand Concourse, well, they also live other places beside the Grand Concourse, but many of them live on the Grand Concourse. This is no reflection on anybody on the Grand Concourse, only those who are guilty. Only those who are guilty. I imagine if I said Central Park West, or Central Park East, someone over there probably would have felt bad too. But I couldn't think of all those places, you know. Yes, ma'am. What did you mean? See there, you're touchy. She said it sounded like an anti-Semitic statement. Why did it sound like an anti? Are Jews the only ones who live on the Grand Concourse? I mean, you know, you might have some Italians up there, and some Irish, or something else. But if Jews are the only ones who live up there, then you should investigate and find out why. Now you're going to say I really sound anti-Semitic. No, you let yourself in for it. The gentleman asked me if I believed in political action, number one, and if the leftist groups got together and put me up for mayor, would I run? So I said that I believe in political action, yes, any kind of political action. I believe in action, period. Whatever kind of action is necessary. When you hear me say any means necessary, I mean exactly that. I believe in anything that is necessary to correct unjust conditions. Political, economic, social, physical, anything that's necessary. I believe in it. As long as it's intelligently directed and designed to get results. But I don't believe in getting involved in any kind of political action or other kind of action without sitting down and analyzing the possibilities of success or failure. And I don't also believe that groups should refer to themselves as leftist, rightist, or middleist. I think that they should just be whatever they are, and don't let people put labels on them. And don't ever put them on yourself. Sometimes a label can kill you.
The third question from the floor was this. Wouldn't you agree that many of the black bourgeoisie also live on the Grand Concourse?
No, this is incorrect. No, this is incorrect. When you say that some of the black bourgeoisie also live on the concourse, which you were saying that to imply that some of our own people also are slum landlords. If you notice, when I made my reference to the concourse, I haven't said anything about any particular color. I mentioned slumlords and whoever lived up there. I included everybody. But see, some of y'all are on the defensive. I mean, it's a dangerous thing, you know, to let yourself get to where every time someone talking, you swear they're talking about you. Not so good. And wherein the bourgeoisie is concerned, and the bourgeois maintaining this particular black establishment, here's a book called The Negro Mood. One of the best. There's a chapter in there called The Black Establishment. This book can be gotten, if you can't find it anywhere else, you can get it at the Black Nationalist bookstore up on 7th Avenue between 125th and 126th. Dr. Mishaw, The Negro Mood. There's a chapter here called The Black Establishment. And you ought to read it. And it tells you how the white power structure downtown controls the black community through the black establishment. And you'll see that it is not the black bourgeoisie that supports the black leader. It's the white power structure downtown. This is what they mean when they say a responsible Negro leader. One that they have put in power, and they use him to maintain the status quo. And this is, when they refer to him as responsible, that's what they're talking about. And the irresponsible Negro leader is one who's not inside their bag, you know. He's going in somewhere else. So don't try and put it back on us. No. We'll accept whatever guilt we have. That is, the black community. We'll accept our black bourgeoisie, their mistakes, and everything else. We'll accept them all. I don't deny any of it. But when I made my statement, it was blanket. I could have been talking about Italians, Irish, Polish, everything. So if you jumped up, you're sitting on a hot seat. I didn't. Yes, sir.
The next questioner asked, have you found that Africans are aware of and sympathetic to the problems of the Afro-American?
Oh, yes. You'll find that at the end of 1964 and the beginning of 1965 already, the Africans at all levels, the level of the diplomat, governmental level, and student level, have already been very open in their vocal pronouncements concerning their sympathies for our condition and our cause, more so than at any other time. During the month of December, I think the public was able to read where African statesmen openly identified the problem of the Mississippi with the problem of Congo, that it was a racist policy that was being practiced, and they openly identified the United States as an imperialist, racist power. So all of this comes about through communication and better understanding and cooperation in areas of mutual benefit.
Malcolm X was then asked if he would defend his opinions to the House Un-American Activities Commission in Washington if called.
Well, I imagine one of the reasons I would welcome an opportunity to defend anything you ever hear me say to anyone, anywhere, at any time. I'll go there without being called. The only thing is you don't question me behind closed doors. Keep it public, and I'll take anything you can throw. Just keep it out in public. Frankly, I don't think that there is a committee in Washington, D.C. that can defend itself when it comes to the race problem in this country. You are taken to Washington when they try and connect you with a foreign power. Why, they treat black people in this country like we're foreigners. If we get connected with ourselves, we're supposed to be subversive. No, brother, I never worry about any kind of investigation. I think that our cause is just. And I think that our patience in itself is sufficient up to now to justify showing some impatience. were justified. And as I said earlier, I think that Lyndon B. Johnson and Hubert Johnson, yeah, that's his name, isn't it? Hubert Humphrey. Well, they're tight, you know. I think that both Johnson and Humphrey, when they wake up every morning, should thank God, whatever God they believe in, that black people in this country have shown the patience that we've shown, or the ignorance that we've displayed. They should thank God, and they should try and do something about it before the impatience increases.
Changing the subject somewhat, the next questioner asks if Malcolm X does not feel that many Latin American countries might be considered satellites of the United States.
No, it's not, but you know, each of those satellite countries are waiting and biding their time. There might be a satellite today and cease to be a satellite tomorrow in this modern age. It is true that most of your South American countries are satellites to the United States. Well, they don't have to feel bad. This country made a satellite out of Khrushchev, made him lose his job. Everybody becomes a satellite. Everybody becomes a satellite nowadays. They did. You go and study the relations between the United States and Russia during the past 4 or 5 years. You'll find that this country maneuvered Russia right into almost becoming a satellite. They had to get rid of Khrushchev in order to get some of their independence back. And I say that as objectively as I can. I'm not trying to jump in anybody's camp, or I don't have any axes to grind. This is just my own opinion from observations that I've made traveling around the world and listening with big ears, that it's easy to become a satellite today without even realizing it. This country can seduce God. Yes, it has that seductive power. Economic, dollarism. You can cuss out colonialism, imperialism, and all other kind of ism, but it's hard for you to cuss at dollarism. When they drop those dollars on you, your soul goes. Yes, sir. The brother wanted to know what practical steps could be taken to confront this unjust situation that exists here in New York and get some meaningful results. This is what you're saying. And I was saying that the one mistake that has been made in the struggle of the oppressed against the oppressor is it has been factionalized too much, too many factions. You got downtown factions, uptown factions, crosstown factions, and some basement factions. And instead of them having any degree of coordination toward a common objective, usually they are divided and spend a lot of time or dissipate a lot of time either being suspicious of each other or knocking at each other or outright fighting each other. Whereas you have black people in Harlem who are militant. They don't go for white people downtown too much, no matter how militant they are. Now, the blacks who come downtown and mix with the whites who are militant usually don't even know how to talk to the blacks who are still uptown. They're far apart. I hate to bring this out, but it's true. I've noticed it from observation. You have all types of people who are fed up with what's going on. You have whites who are fed up. You have blacks who are fed up. The whites who are fed up can't come uptown too easily, because uptown is more fed up than anybody else. And they are fed up, so that it's not so easy to come uptown. Whereas the blacks uptown who come downtown usually are the type, you know, who almost lose their identity. They lose their soul, so to speak. so that they are not in a position to serve as a bridge between the militant whites and the militant blacks. That type can't do it. I hate to hit him like that, but it's true. He has lost his identity. He's lost his feeling. And usually, play it cool, please. He has actually lost his contact with Harlem himself, so that he serves no purpose. He's almost rootless. He's not uptown and he's not fully downtown. So when the day comes wherein the whites who are really fed up, I don't mean these jive whites who pose as liberals and who are not, but those who are fed up with what is going on, when they learn how to really establish the proper type of communication with those uptown who are fed up, and they get some coordinated action going, you'll get some change. You'll get some change. And it will take both. It will take everything that you got. It will take that. But how many sitting here right now feel that they could truly identify with a struggle that was designed to eliminate the basic causes that create the conditions that exist? Not very many. They can jive. But when it comes to identifying yourself with a struggle that is not endorsed by the power structure, that is not acceptable, that the ground rules are not laid down by the society in which you live and which you're struggling against, you can't identify with that. You step back. Oh, when things get bad enough, then everybody gets into the act. And that's what's coming in 1965. Way in the back.
Someone then asks how he feels about the failure of the Mississippi Democratic Party to include black men among its representatives to Washington.
First, when you ask about the Mississippi Party, number one, they put the blame in the wrong place. You don't blame Mississippians, Mississippi Democrats, for what's happening in Mississippi. Who is the head of the Democratic Party? The president. He's the head of the party. And the vice head is the vice president. These are the ones who are responsible for the feeding of these crackers from Mississippi. You'd have to sit me down here all night long and explain it to me differently than that. Put the blame where the blame is, and you'll get results. Wagner's a Democrat. What stand did he take on the feeding of those men? Wagner's a powerful Democrat. What stand did he take? Let me tell you. We sent out a press release to every newspaper in this city, radio and television, demanding that since so many black people supported Johnson and Humphrey and Wagner, and he's running for office right now this year, where does he stand? And let us know before January the 4th. Why, that hasn't been printed even in the black newspapers. No, why? Because they know that puts them on the spot. Why, if Johnson didn't want those Mississippi representatives seated, they wouldn't have been seated. If Hubert Humphrey didn't want them seated, they wouldn't have been seated. And if Wagner didn't want them seated, he carries a whole lot of influence, he and Bobby. They could have at least kept a couple of them from being seated. But they haven't opened up their mouth to take sides yet. Now, they'll all be talking about Adam Clayton Powell. Powell took a stand, along with this man Ryan, who comes from around here somewhere. Ryan and Powell did take a stand. But those that call themselves liberals, what did they say in advance? How much lobbying did they do? How much open public support did they give to it? Nothing. And then you wonder why they fail? No, they'll always fail, brother, when they see you going in the wrong direction. For one thing, you got to get mad. And you have to let them know that you have as much right in the house as they. And if both of you can't sit down in that house at peace, it's better for you to put it on fire and burn it to the ground. Burn it to the ground. Now let me explain what I mean. So that I won't be misquoted. I'm talking about the house in which you live. Your real estate. So when you you stool pigeons go out of here and tell the man, you be sure you tell it right. Because when they take me to court, that's what I'll say. I was talking about houses. But you get the point. Yes, sir.
Do you think that there are any whites who would be willing to fight with the black man should there be a war between the races in this country?
There are many white people in this country, especially the young generation, who realize that the injustice that has been done and is being done to black people cannot go on without the chickens coming home to roost eventually. And those white people, even if they're not morally motivated, their intelligence forces them to see that something must be done. And they, many of them, would be willing to involve themselves in the type of operation that you just are talking about. I, for one, when a white man comes to me and tells me how liberal he is, the first thing I want to know, is he a nonviolent liberal or the other kind? I don't go for any nonviolent white liberal. If you are for me, and my problem, when I say me, I mean us, our people, then you have to be willing to do as old John Brown did. And if you're not of the John Brown school of white liberals, we'll get you later. Later. You're right, sir. The only way to straighten it out is the way you say. And people who don't see it, they don't really believe in the cause in the first place. And never think that black people are outnumbered all the time. We got black people whom you don't know are black people. We got them everywhere. We got some who look like Italians. That's how we know what the Italians say. We got some who look just like Jews, and we know what the Jews are saying. We're in their house. We got some who look Irish. We got every kind of looking black man you can dream of. And you should know we got him because you helped make him. And these people are distributed everywhere, so that it is almost impossible for you or the power structure to make a move against us, because us is already there. They only end up sending us after us. We're not that much outnumbered. And in Mississippi, half the people in Mississippi are black. It's not a case. I never let somebody tell me we're outnumbered. This country right now wouldn't be independent if they had listened to the British. The British were telling the 13 colonies, we got you outnumbered. What did old Pat say? Liberty or death. Well, that's what you should say. And I don't think the odds against us today are any greater than it was against them. No, when you want freedom, you don't care about odds. And he doesn't care about odds or consequences. He wants to be respected as a human being. I, for one, don't think we should sit around and wait for the Supreme Court or the Congress or the Senate or the President. If you don't need a president to tell you you're a human being, you insult me to tell me to wait for the president. And if you don't need the Supreme Court to tell you you have the right to go to school, you insult me again if you expect me to wait on the Supreme Court. Or you insult me if you expect me to wait on some civil rights legislation. No. I'm the man that you think you are. And if it doesn't take legislation to make you a man and your rights recognized, don't even talk that legislative talk to me. No. If we're both human beings, we'll both do the same thing. And if you want to know what I'll do, figure out what you would do. I'll do the same thing, only more of it.
Now we hear what Malcolm X thinks of the situation in Vietnam.
You put the government on the spot nowadays when you mention South Vietnam. They feel embarrassed. You notice that? they wish they could just not even have to read the newspaper about South Vietnam. And you can't blame them. It's just a trap that they let themselves get into. I think it was John Foster Dulles whom they try and blame it on because he's dead. But they're trapped. They can't get out of it. You notice I say they? They are trapped. And they can't get out of it. If they pull more men in, they'll get deeper. If they pull the men out, it's a defeat. And they should have known in the first place. France had about 200,000 Frenchmen over there, and the most highly mechanized modern army sitting on this earth. And those little rice farmers ate them up, and their tanks and everything else. Yes, they did. And France was deeply entrenched, had been over there 100 or more years. Now, if she couldn't stay there and was entrenched, why, you are out of your mind if you think Sam can get in over there. No. But we're not supposed to say that. If we say that, we're anti-American, or we're seditious, or we're subversive, or we're advocating something that's not intelligent. So that's 2 minutes, sir. Now they are turning around and getting in a worse situation in the Congo. They're getting into the Congo the same way they got into South Vietnam. They put Diem, what's his name? Diem over there. Diem took all their money, all their war equipment and everything else and got them trapped. Then they killed Diem. Yes, they killed him. Murdered him. Cold blood. He and his brother, Madame Nou's husband. Because they were embarrassed. They found out that they had made him strong and then he was turning against them. So they killed him and put big men in his place. You know, the fat ones. And he wouldn't act right, and they got rid of him and put Khan in his place. And he started telling Taylor to get out. So they're trapped. Don't you know when your friends, your puppets, when the puppets start talking back to the puppeteer is in bad shape. The same thing is happening in the Congo. They're using Chombe like they used Diem. They put Chombe in power. Never let them tell you that it was an accident that Chombe got in power. A very highly placed African official told me that one of the most powerful men in the State Department jumped on an airplane and followed an African leader almost all the way home over a year ago, begging him to use his influence to get other African heads of state to accept Chombe as the prime minister in the Congo. This was out of Washington, D.C., where you and I send taxes. They put Chombe there, a murderer. They send millions of dollars a day to him, too, sir. He takes that millions of dollars to hire white mercenaries. Why? Because the Congolese soldiers won't fight for Chombe. The Congolese soldier has never won a victory for the Leopoldville government. The only victories won by Congolese soldiers are won by the freedom fighters who are fighting for the People's Republic of Congo, whose headquarters was Stanleyville. They win. They took spears and arrows and beat Central Congolese soldiers who had guns, showing you the difference. It's in the heart. Those from the Oriental province knew what they were fighting for. They were fighting for themselves. They were fighting for their land, so that they could fight better with a spear and an arrow than the soldiers from the central government could fight with the best equipment the West could supply them. Because they knew that they weren't really fighting for the Congolese government. They were fighting for Western interests, and they couldn't do it in all good conscience. So when their brothers from the Oriental province attacked them, they threw down their guns and ran. And this is how the freedom fighters became armed. They weren't being armed by Chinese. They were being armed by the soldiers from Chombe's forces who would throw down their guns and run. They took over 2/3 of the Congo, and it frightened the West to death. So they had to take Shambi and put Shambi there, because Shambi was the only African who was criminal enough to participate in the scheme that the Western powers had of sending in Western troops after the so-called legal head of government would ask for them. You notice how they did this? They knew that they would have to send troops over there to save the Congo for the Western interest. But they had to have a man to make it legal who would call them in, and they put Shambi there, because Shambi is a criminal. And when Shambi, and by the way, if it is legal, if the United States justifies its entry into the Congo with its military forces simply because the head of state asked them, then Castro, who's the legal head of Cuba, was well within his rights to ask Russia to put missiles in Cuba. It's the same argument. If one is sovereign, both are sovereign. But they don't use law. They use law for their interest. They don't go by law, international, federal, local, nothing. They go by whatever is expedient to protect the interests that are at stake. And this is what they did with Shambi. And when Shambi couldn't get Africans to fight for him, so he got the killers from South Africa, imported them, hired killers. What is a mercenary? A mercenary isn't a patriot. He kills. He's bloodthirsty. He kills for pay. He'll kill anything. And a human is the same as a dog to him. And it was these mercenaries from South Africa and southern Rhodesia, and some of them were from Israel, by the way. Yes, they were. Some were from Israel. Some were. I'm not saying that as anti-statement. Some were from Israel. I was in Africa when they shot down one of the pilots that were bombing the African villages, and he was an Israeli from Israel. And what's her name, Golda Meir, had to make a policy statement disassociating Israel from his actions. Don't tell me that it didn't happen. I was there. So when these white soldiers started into the war, and they really began to brutally massacre the Congolese villagers, then the freedom fighters in the Oriental province became more vicious. But they never were involved in these so-called acts of brutality and massacre until the whites from South Africa were employed by Shambi, and they came in mercilessly. And the attitude then of those in the eastern province, who are the freedom fighters, not rebels or rebels, they are freedom fighters. That's the liberation movement. That's the People's Republic of the Congo. Their headquarters is Stanleyville. And they're a legal government, just as legal as the central government, because at least they are the people of the Congo, and the central government was placed there by outside interests. So when they saw that the Western interests were supplying Shambi with these highly mechanized weapons of warfare, that they were using anti-Castro Cuban pilots to drop bombs on defenseless African villages, destroying women and children as well as men, they had no alternative other than to take hostages and hold them there to keep those planes from dropping those bombs. This is the only reason the hostages were held. They held them to keep the white pilots from dropping bombs on defenseless African cities and villages. And had the West not been bombing them, they never would have taken the hostages in the first place. And they never committed any kind of murder of the hostages until the paratroopers were dropped on Stanleyville. And almost every one of the hostages that come back, they speak of atrocities, but they admit that the atrocities didn't begin until the paratroopers were dropped. And when you know that they are at war, and they considered themselves at war, then you know what happens in warfare. And what they did to a handful of hostages was no worse than what the United States did when she dropped a bomb on Hiroshima and on Nagasaki. I just want to say one more paragraph on that, and then we'll get to it. So what is the United States faced with? It's impossible for Shambi to stay in power without the mercenaries, which means that no Africans will support Shambi. No African army will fight for Shambi. The only way Shelby can stay in power is by bringing in white mercenaries, which means eventually the white mercenaries from South Africa and other parts of Europe will be dissipated. Then the U.S., the same as in South Vietnam, will have to send in advisors, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 advisors. Why, shucks, if they can't handle the rice eaters the rice farmers, and I don't say that as a derogatory statement, those brothers are great in Asia. If they can't handle those brothers that have been raised on rice in South Vietnam, why, you know she can't handle those brothers in the Congo. No.
A man announces his commitment to nonviolence and asks Malcolm X what he thinks of nonviolence as a tactic.
I have great respect and admiration for one who has the nerve to tie his own hands and then walk out and let a brute brutalize him. I have to respect him because he's doing something that I don't understand. What he's doing is beyond my power even to comprehend. It would be equivalent to putting handcuffs on me and putting me in the ring and telling me to fight Cassius Clay or Sonny Liston non-violently. I don't think I could do it. And whoever could do it, I'd have to, power to you. But all I'm saying, sir, is this. When you're in Mississippi, whenever you're dealing with an enemy, you have to be able to, there must be some dialogue. You have to be able to communicate. You can't, and the medium of communication usually is language. You must speak the language that the other person understands. If you're speaking to someone who can speak only French, you can't speak German to him, or Italian, or Swahili. You have to speak to him in the language he understands. When you're in Mississippi, speaking the language of morality, or the language of nonviolence, you're not communicating. You're talking a language that they don't understand. All I suggest is, and I don't suggest it as condemnation of Coco or SNCC. I know too many of them. They're brave students, men, and all of that. All I'm saying is, since your approach, as you say, is tactical, a tactical approach is designed to get certain results. It's designed to keep you alive. It's designed to bring about victory. Why, we just can't say that victory has been brought about. We can't say that it is preserving life. I'm inclined to believe that you take the same people who are so dedicated and don't tie their hands. Tell them to be peaceful. Tell them obey the law. Tell them to be disciplined and all of that. But at the same time, tell them, while you are obeying the law and trying to help teach the people of Mississippi who are black how to register so that they too can obey the law. Anyone who steps up then and begins to try and keep you from this registration, they're breaking the law. They are lawbreakers. They're criminals. Why, then you have, what kind of language are you going to use? Love? You got the wrong language. They don't love themselves. They don't love each other. There's no love between them. So I'm not criticizing you or condemning you, but I am questioning your tactics. I'm questioning your tactics.
In his excitement to Malcolm X's response, he then asks quickly how Malcolm X regards the deaths of the 3 civil rights workers in Mississippi, remarking that they were nonviolent.
Yes, if Swerner could come back here and talk to you, or what's the black one's name? Let me tell you something. I was over in Africa, and I read what they did to Jenkins. They said that they beat that black one to death. They shot the other 2. But they said they beat every bone was broken. Now, you know what? I think people who tell our people to be nonviolent are almost agents of the Ku Klux Klan. I don't think 1965 will see a very nonviolent year. Your year was 64. I'm going down to Mississippi myself. I've been invited to go on down there. And Alabama, some of those other places. And, you know, I just don't see nonviolence. You can go with me. Sir?
Could we have some order, please?
Yeah, he's all right.
We have some order, please.
I don't blame him. He's excited. I would be excited if... Now, look. Hey, look here, bro. Hey, look. If you're going to be nonviolent in Mississippi, you should be nonviolent here. I tell you why. It would be more tactical to be nonviolent with me than it would be to be nonviolent with the Klan. Because, for a lot of reasons.
This program was produced by Charles Hobson. Your announcer is Kay Lindsay.